Before you scroll, think about this. What kind of person looks danger in the eye and calls it beautiful? Roger Halston wasn't just a snake keeper. He was obsessed. He believed every serpent had a soul, that trust could tame instinct. But one quiet night in 2022, inside a locked reptile room with over 30 venomous snakes, that trust was shattered in the most horrifying way imaginable. Stay with me until the end, because what rescuers found when they finally broke through that door was something they said they'd never forget. Before we begin, this is Animal Quest's HQ, where we dive deep into the wildest and most chilling encounters between humans and the creatures they thought they understood. Hit that like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, so you never miss a true wildlife story that'll keep your heart racing. Roger Halston had spent more than 15 years studying reptiles, from the jungles of Indonesia to small-town reptile expos across the US. To him, snakes weren't monsters. They were misunderstood, graceful, ancient, and deeply intelligent. Friends described Roger as calm, methodical, the kind of man who could hold a cobra without his pulse rising. He often said, "If you respect them, they'll respect you." But behind that quiet confidence, there were signs of growing obsession. Roger had recently begun keeping larger and more unpredictable species: king cobras, reticulated pythons, and a green anaconda that locals called seraph. He kept them in his private reptile room, a space no one else was allowed to enter after dark. Those who knew him said he spent long hours there alone, sometimes until 3 or 4 in the morning. He claimed it was when the snakes were most awake. But on one of those nights, as a storm rolled in and the power flickered, something went terribly wrong. It was a cold, stormy night, March 2022. The rain came down in sheets, and the sound of thunder echoed through the valley. Inside his reptile room, Roger Halston was doing what he always did: cleaning tanks, recording feeding notes, adjusting heat lamps. A routine night, until it wasn't. At around 10:47 p.m., the power to Roger's property went out. Neighbors later said they saw his flashlight beam through the window, moving back and forth, like he was searching for something. Then, one of them heard it. A loud crash, glass shattering, followed by a single, muffled scream. They called him several times. No answer. At first, they assumed he'd dropped something, or that the storm had startled the snakes. But as the hours passed, the light inside that room never came back on. By morning, the local sheriff's department arrived with animal control officers. Roger's truck was still in the driveway, the door to the reptile room locked from the inside. When they finally forced it open, what they saw inside stunned everyone into silence. The air inside Roger's reptile room was thick, humid, and almost still. The smell of damp wood and musk filled the space. Dozens of glass enclosures lined the walls, but several had been knocked over or cracked open. In the corner, a toppled terrarium lay shattered, and there, beside it, was Roger Halston, motionless. At first, rescuers thought he'd been electrocuted when the power flickered back on. But then they noticed the bruising, deep marks along his neck and chest, the unmistakable pattern of constriction. Next to him lay a trail of scales and wet prints leading to the corner of the room, where they found it: a reticulated python, nearly 18 feet long, Roger's prized specimen, nicknamed Mara. She had forced her way out of a cracked enclosure after the power outage caused her heating lamp to fail. Cold, agitated, instinctive. Experts say pythons don't attack out of malice, but when they feel threatened or see sudden movement, instinct takes over. Roger may have tried to move her, calm her, or lift her back into the tank. But in that confined space, in the darkness, it was already too late. For nearly 10 minutes, investigators believe Roger fought for his life. The struggle was violent, chaotic. Shelves overturned, glass shattered, notebooks scattered across the floor. And then, silence. By the time rescue teams arrived, Mara had coiled herself back into a corner, calm again, as if nothing had happened. Animal control officers spent hours carefully removing each reptile, from harmless corn snakes to venomous vipers that had escaped their cages during the storm. Inside, investigators found notebooks filled with years of Roger's observations, feeding charts, behavioral studies, handwritten reflections on trust and instinct. One page was circled in red ink. It read, "If they sense your fear, you've already lost." The official cause of death was listed as asphyxiation caused by constriction. Authorities concluded that Roger had been attempting to handle Mara during the outage, when the snake, stressed by cold and confusion, struck out instinctively. To the reptile community, the news hit hard. He wasn't reckless. He was respected. For years, Roger had spoken at schools and wildlife programs, teaching that snakes weren't killers, that they reacted, never planned. But this incident blurred that message. How could a man who knew them better than anyone become their victim? People forget, snakes aren't domestic animals. They're instinct-driven. Even the most experienced handlers can make one wrong move, and that's all it takes. Friends described Roger as passionate to the very end. He believed understanding the wild required living alongside it. And in a way, that belief never left him. Within hours, Roger Halston's story spread across the country. News outlets called it a tragic irony. A man devoted to understanding snakes, taken by the very creature he loved most. Animal sanctuaries and reptile centers nationwide paused their shows. Some reviewed safety protocols. Others questioned if private keeping of large constrictors should be banned altogether. But for those who knew Roger, it wasn't about fear or blame. They said he died doing what he believed in, bridging the gap between humans and the wild, even when the wild reminded us who's truly in control. In the end, Roger Halston's story isn't just about danger. It's about devotion and the thin line between respect and risk. He believed that understanding the wild meant trusting it completely. But sometimes even trust can turn fatal. His life reminds us that nature isn't cruel, it's honest. And no matter how close we get, the wild will always answer to its own rules. If Roger's story moved you, share this video to keep his message alive. That every creature, no matter how feared, deserves respect. You've been watching Animal Quest's HQ, where every story uncovers the fragile bond between humans and the wild. Until next time, stay curious, stay cautious, and never forget, nature always has the final say.